Hello, I'm the real-life fake wizard, and I just finished watching Monarch: Legacy of Monsters Season 1 in preparation for Season 2 coming out soon. And I have to tell you, this show is aggressively terrible. Hey now, what is the worst part of 99% of all Godzilla movies? That's right. It's the people. It's the people subplots. Okay, well, we're gonna do the plot of our show where it's just the people you don't like, and we're gonna stretch it out over 10 episodes at 60 minutes apiece. That's right, 10 episodes. This is a 10-hour slogfest. 10 hours of your life to tell a simple sci-fi story that wouldn't have made a good 90-minute feature. Every episode gives you maybe 2 or 3 minutes of actual monster content. The rest is underdeveloped family drama, characters wandering around looking confused, and dialogue so thin that even the critics who liked the show couldn't defend it. And so, in my rage and crash out that my neighbors heard at 2 a.m. as we finished watching Season 1, I realized that I needed to talk about it, or the problem, or problems, because Monarch here, it's not special with the amount of problems it has. All streaming television is garbage. It's a waste of your time. And so I've actually narrowed down here 10 specific reasons why streaming television is unforgivably bad, and we're going to talk about it right now. Today's indie game shoutout is Stolen Realm, a simultaneous turn-based tactical dungeon-crawling looter with action RPG elements where you control up to 6 heroes, solo or through online co-op. Venture forth in adventures set in a high fantasy, low-poly world. To learn more about this and hundreds of other indie games, visit our free indie game discovery network, fakeportal.com, or scan the QR code on your screen. Now back to the video. Reason 1, death of the episode. You know, television used to be built on episodes, complete, self-contained stories that started, developed, and resolved within a single sitting. You could tune in to the X-Files on a Tuesday night, watch Mulder and Scully investigate a monster in a small town, and walk away feeling satisfied. It was a complete experience. You didn't need to have watched the previous 12 episodes. You didn't need to come back next week, though you likely wanted to because you had a good time now. That hour of your life was respected because the writers understood something fundamental. You gave them your evening, and they owed you a complete story, a whole story, a beginning, middle, and an end. And they owed it to you that night. Star Trek: The Next Generation did this. The Twilight Zone did this. Seinfeld did this. Even serialized shows like Buffy the Vampire Slayer managed to have plenty of episodes that worked on their own while contributing to a larger arc. Doctor Who used to do this right, and there was a craft to it. Writing a story that could stand alone and serve the whole, it was and still is very hard to do. It requires actual writing ability to do it. The death of the episode started with Breaking Bad, yes, but the final nail in the coffin was streaming platforms. That pretty much killed it dead. What replaced it is full serialization. One story, one single thin narrative stretched across 8 or 10 episodes like not enough butter scraped across too much bread. And the problem is that most of these stories aren't strong enough for that. They're barely strong enough for 90-minute movie premises. Well, Monarch is exactly this. The entire first season is one idea. A family discovers a connection to a secret monster organization. They go looking for answers, and for a limited time, they end up in another dimension. That's a movie. That is a story that belongs in a movie. But it's not 10 episodes worth of a show. So what fills in the other 8.5 or so hours is characters walking around looking confused, characters arguing about their daddies, and characters sitting in rooms repeating information that the audience already has, all while Godzilla is somewhere off doing anything better than being here. This show is like a hostage situation where all the monsters that you tuned in for are the ransom, and the writers keep moving the drop point on you. Look at The Acolyte. 8 episodes to tell an empty story. Secret Invasion, 6 episodes for a premise that wouldn't work as a 2-hour thriller. Obi-Wan Kenobi, 6 episodes that exist solely to see Obi-Wan and Darth Vader fight again for 10 minutes. And also, no one wanted this reunion in the first place. Every chase scene, every filler planet, every side quest is the show stalling for time because it doesn't have enough story to justify its own existence. WandaVision, 9 episodes with filler and padding. The list here actually goes on and on. Nearly every streaming show today would have been better if it had been a movie. And it's bad enough that the stories aren't enough on their own, but compounded by the fact that each episode isn't satisfying in its own isolation. These shows, while airing week to week, are hollow and empty, practically requiring you to binge them in a single sitting so that you don't feel the dead space. Your brain has less time to register that nothing has happened in this episode. The thin stretches are hidden by the momentum of you clicking to watch the next episode immediately on your remote. But put these things on week to week when you're watching these shows the way they're actually released, and it's a disaster. Every Wednesday or Friday or whatever day your show drops, you sit down, you watch your 50 minutes, and you walk away thinking, that's it? Because yeah, that's it. Nothing happened. The plot hardly moved an inch. A character had a conversation. Someone stared into the middle distance. Someone cried about their feelings, and you're supposed to come back next week and do it again. And the week after that. And the week after that. Think about what that means for you and me and us as the viewing public. You commit 8 weeks or more to one of these shows. That's nearly 2 months of your life where every week you carve out an hour, you sit down and you watch an episode that is not, by an honest measure, a satisfying piece of television. And then you do this 8 times, and maybe by the end of those 8 weeks, the story is okay. Not great, not amazing, it's just okay. All for a story concept that, again, would have played better if it was a 90-minute feature film. Even Stranger Things fits this criteria. The last season of Stranger Things had 8 episodes, of which nothing important enough happens in the first 6 episodes to justify them being there. Answers are not given until the finale, and even then those answers weren't satisfying. Think of how much could have been reduced down to make a Stranger Things finale movie event instead. People might have had a better experience. They might have had a better appreciation for it if it was a movie. How many Stranger Things fans do we still got out there now, huh? I don't think many. And that's barely scratching the surface on what really went wrong with Stranger Things. We'll talk about more as we get into this. Continuing on. Reason number 2, mystery box syndrome. When you can't write episodes that stand on their own, because you can't write, you need a trick to keep the audience coming back every week. And the trick is cheap and coined by channel favorite J.J. Abrams. It's like a magician's secret. The writer withholds information and teases a reveal, and they dangle some keys in front of you, a mystery that they have no intention of solving. Make the audience think a payoff is coming, so they sit through 10 hours of garbage waiting for it. But it's not coming. This is the mystery box, and inside is nothing. Lost is the original sin here. Years of mysteries, smoke monsters and hatches and numbers and polar bears, and the writers have openly admitted, on the record, that they didn't have any answers. They were making it up all along. And every week, millions of people rearranged their schedules to watch a show whose creators didn't know where it was going. The ending was so unsatisfying that it retroactively destroyed the entire series for a massive portion of the audience. And here's the insane thing, this is the crazy part. Every single mystery box show since then has chased the Lost model, even though it's historically a known failure. Creatives, writers, producers, people in Hollywood, all these creative people have watched this car crash and thought, yeah, let's do that again. Westworld. Season 1 was a genuine puzzle with a genuine payoff. Many people called it great television. So what did the showrunners do? Well, apparently Reddit had cracked their mystery too fast, and instead of writing a better mystery or a new ending, they made the show deliberately incomprehensible, all to stay ahead of an ever-moving internet. They didn't write a smarter show, they wrote a more confusing one, on purpose, in order to beat out Reddit. And actually, this shines a massive light on another mystery box problem that we'll address further in a moment. When you create a mystery box, you give the audience time to imagine, and they will outthink and outmaneuver anything you thought you could slip past them, because the audience isn't as stupid as you think that they are. Westworld was canceled after season 4 with a fraction of its original audience sticking around, and every single person involved really should be embarrassed. Yellow Jackets, an exciting pilot followed by 2 seasons of absolute refusal to deliver on anything they proposed. Every week, another mystery dangled. Every week, nothing resolved. The audience built better theories than the writers had scripts, and that's not a compliment to the audience, that's just an indictment of the writers. You're a writer. You have one job. And you failed at it. The Acolyte mystery boxed a story that had no business being mystery boxed. Silo crawled to a halt under its own withholding. Even Stranger Things stacked mysteries on top of mysteries until the mythology was groaning under the weight of it all like a Jenga tower about to collapse. And then it eventually did. And that takes us to Severance. A lot of people love Severance, but Severance is the most dangerous mystery box on television today, my friends. The premise is interesting. Season 1 was beloved by many. Season 2, a lot of people liked as well. And inside of all that goodwill, the writers have built an enormous tower of unanswered questions. Unless these writers are legitimate geniuses who mapped this entire thing out years in advance, and I mean legitimately mapped it out, not we have a general idea, then the mystery box in Severance is going to collapse. Just like in Lost, just like Westworld, just like every other show that played this game and failed. As I said earlier, there's a fundamental problem. The audience will always outwrite the writers, always. Think of any movie, right? A movie controls its pacing. Sometimes you have 90 minutes, sometimes you have 2 hours, and the audience doesn't have time to speculate all the possibilities of solutions. They just have enough time to figure out what's going to happen by the end of the current scene. But an 8-week series gives millions of people 8 weeks of downtime between setup and payoff. 8 weeks of Reddit threads and YouTube videos and forum posts. 8 weeks for the collective intelligence of the internet to generate every possible outcome. The writers had a few months in a room, maybe years to map this all out. The crowd had 8 weeks with unlimited manpower and unlimited imagination. The reveal to your mystery box will almost always be a letdown because you gave the audience a chance to think about it. Firstly, because the math doesn't work out here, but secondly, the writers aren't actually smart enough or long-term thinking enough to plan this mystery all the way to the end. Every single show that relies on mystery box writing to get its next season is building its foundation on sand. Reason number 3, my feelings. Here we go, my friends. The plot is moving, the stakes are elevating, something is actually happening for once, and we have momentum, and then everything stops dead because someone needs to sit down and tell you how they feel. I call this phenomenon my feelings, when the plot is hijacked by terrible writers to have characters vent about how they feel right now. It is the single most infuriating and most insulting trend in modern streaming television. We find this often in streaming show finales. You know, where there are about 45 minutes left to credits and there are still 100 unanswered questions. Time is of the essence, but don't worry. We need to sit on a log and talk about how everything is making us feel. I usually start yelling at the screen at this point. We have time for this? Now, to be completely clear, my feelings is not the same thing as emotional character development. All right, let's be clear on that. My feelings is actually the opposite. My feelings is when the story stops dead and grinds to a halt so that a character can narrate their emotional state directly to your face. There's no action or conflict or difficult choice under pressure that has to be resolved. These are terribly written scenes where 2 characters sit across from each other and one of them says, essentially, "Let me explain to you how I'm feeling right now. I'm sad, I'm angry, I regret the past, there are issues that I have that are unresolved." It's the ultimate tell, don't show verbal dump where the audience doesn't actually care about anything these characters are saying because you haven't given the audience a reason to care. Monarch does this constantly. You are watching a show about giant monsters destroying cities, and every other scene is family members processing their daddy issues over a cup of coffee. There is a 300-foot radioactive lizard somewhere off-screen being very patient while these people have a group therapy session. The Witcher was built on this. You have action build, you have tensions rise, and 15 minutes later, we get another campfire therapy. Characters stop, process their feelings, and then share them with us. These emotional sessions don't feel like they're earned. It feels like they're scheduled. Star Wars Ahsoka. The show's already too thin plotline stopped dead in every single episode for characters to cross their arms and passive-aggressively talk about their feelings. The actual stakes of the show, being Grand Admiral Thrawn's return, is abandoned each episode for a not-so-quick therapy session. And then there's Discovery and Starfleet Academy, which are in a league of their own with this problem. Let's say this: the bridge of a starship is under attack, the shields are failing, someone is dying, and a character needs to stop in the middle of a combat scenario to validate another crew member's anxiety. Hey, I see you're really struggling with this right now. What? Yeah, struggling? Yeah, the ship is under attack. Yeah, and even though we're under attack and likely gonna die, I just want you to know, I see who you really are on the inside. What are you doing? Get to work. Help someone now. We're gonna die. No, it's okay. If we die, it's all right because I know who I am now, and I think you should know who you are too. All right, hit me with the torpedo. Yeah, the writers don't understand that showing a character overcome an obstacle is the character development. You don't need to explain it. The audience can see it. We're not that stupid, at least not all of us, not yet. But these writers do not trust us to feel anything unless a character tells us what to feel first. And that doesn't add depth. It's actually removing and reducing it. It replaces the audience's emotional experience to a character's emotional press release. And every show that does this is telling you to your face that they don't think you're smart enough to follow along without a narrator holding your hand through every feeling. Reason number 4, the cliffhanger scam. What I am about to describe here should genuinely offend you, as it does me, because what these companies are doing is stealing from you. They're stealing something. And what they're stealing happens to be the one thing that you can never get back. It's the most important thing you have: your time. These streaming shows cost a fortune. They take years to produce. Writers' rooms, development hell, casting, pre-production, production, post-production, marketing campaigns, press tours, reshoots, premiere events, millions and millions of dollars of risk over years and years of work. And then they have the audacity to end their season without finishing the story, to look you in the eye after 8 or 10 hours of your life and say, want to know how the show ends? Come back next year. Maybe, if we feel like it, if our metrics are good enough, if Netflix doesn't cancel us first. Leslie Headland promised that The Acolyte would have a complete ending in a single season that took them years to make. This was a blatant lie. The Acolyte ended on one of the most open-ended cliffhangers in all of Star Wars. The cliffhanger itself is a narrative choice scam. They sold you a story, you sat through 10 hours of it, and they didn't deliver an ending. That is theft. They took your time and gave you nothing, and it gets worse than that. Well, actually, because they took your money too. You paid for this experience, but half the time, the next season never comes. Chaos on Netflix. Jeff Goldblum as Zeus. Massive cliffhanger. Canceled. You'll never know what happens if you watch that. $18.99. Season 1 ends with a cliffhanger twist. The whole narrative was designed as a multi-season story, but it was canceled after 1 season. Shadow and Bone diverged from the source material, so you can't even read the books to find out what happens. It ended on a cliffhanger, forcing you to come back for more, and then it was canceled. Warrior Nun. 2 seasons, massive cliffhanger, canceled. The Santa Clarita Diet. 3 seasons with a growing audience. Season 3 had a huge cliffhanger, and it was canceled. Every show that ends without a proper conclusion wasted your time. Every hour you spent on a story that will never get finished is an hour that you will never get back. And any company that greenlights a serialized show without committing to a completed story, at some point I believe they don't respect you because they don't respect your time. Now hold on, because all the examples I just gave happen to be shows that cliffhangered and then were canceled. But there are actually plenty of shows that complete their series and still end on cliffhangers that might lead to something else years later. We see this with a lot of Disney crap. WandaVision ends on a cliffhanger setup for Doctor Strange 2, but Doctor Strange 2 fundamentally undoes all of the growth from WandaVision. Agatha All Along ends on a setup for, I don't know, it ended on a cliffhanger for more to come, but that show wasn't meant to get another season. Was it Vision Quest maybe? I don't know, and I really don't care, but it's not an ending. Ahsoka ends on an extremely unsatisfying cliffhanger with no guarantee of a follow-up. Season 2 of Ahsoka was not greenlit when they ended it on this terrible ending. Monarch as well. It ends with a setup for more to come. Season 1 is hardly an ending at all, and it took a long time for Monarch Season 2 to get greenlit. These writers are incapable of writing stories good enough to exist on their own, and also give viewers compelling reasons to come back for more. Reason number 4, dated language. In Monarch, there is a scene in the beginning of the show that is set in 2015, and a character says, very casually, as if it's the most normal thing in the world, "I have my own podcast." In 2015? No, you don't. I mean, technically, podcasting existed in 2015, but that's not the point. That line was not written for a character living in 2015. That line was written for a viewer sitting on their couch in 2024 who's supposed to go, "Oh, podcasts. I know what podcasts are." It's a wink nod. The writers break the fourth wall to let you know they're aware of what year you live in, and it fails every single time. Specifically, it fails on 3 different levels. Firstly, it fails the fictional world because the reference doesn't fit the time period well enough. It fails the viewer watching today because it shatters any immersion you might have had by reminding you that a writer exists behind the script, winking at you like a used car salesman. And 3, and this is the part nobody talks about enough, it fails every future viewer who watches this show after the cultural moment has passed. For instance, in 2052, "I have my own podcast" will likely mean as much to a new viewer as "I have my own MySpace page." Do you see what I mean? It's a reference with an expiration date, and by including it, the writers have guaranteed that this moment will feel dated and stupid to every audience that watches it beyond a narrow window of about usually 3 years. Some examples are Willow on Disney+. You remember that? Did you catch it? It's not available anymore, but this was a fantasy series set in a medieval world. Characters speak, unfortunately, like it's 2022 and they're California teenagers. That sucks. What's the deal with this guy? The original 1988 film still feels timeless. The series, which is no longer available to be seen, feels like it was written by someone who just closed TikTok and thought their group chat was Tolkien. How about She-Hulk? Filled with internet culture, memes, dating apps, and all injected into a superhero legal drama to feel relatable. By 2024, only 2 years after release, those references are already extraordinarily stale. Rings of Power tries to split the difference here. It's not modern, but it's not period. It's entirely faked and lands in what critics called corporate fantasy, an entire uncanny valley of language where nothing sounds real.
Or are you a castaway, grasping for a handhold in a tempest? There is a tempest in me!
Reason number 6, fake movie quality. This is a difficult point to describe, but it's definitely one you can see with your own eyes, because shows today have the ability to look impressive. When they want to try, right? I'll give them that. But it doesn't matter. And it could look incredible, but looks can be deceiving, and they usually are. The scripts are so thin and so hollow, so aggressively mediocre, that the gorgeous visuals basically become insulting. You can see where every dollar went, and none of those dollars went to the writing. Apple and Disney and Paramount and Warner Brothers' unlimited budgets produce the most beautiful screensavers on your television. Like, congratulations, you spent a fortune making a show that looks amazing but says absolutely nothing. I call this fake movie quality. It's the illusion of cinema. These shows desperately want to be movies. There's epic scopes, sweeping landscapes, big orchestral scores. I mean, the soundtracks on some of these shows is incredible. Every Star Wars, Marvel, and franchise show on Disney Plus tries its hardest to appear as if it's a movie. They all look like movie quality, at least until the budget runs out, and then there is an unlimited supply of weak stories to back up these expensive visuals. We look at something like Halo. The budget was poured into environments and action sequences, but the writing is completely disconnected from the source material and wasteful. The fans debated what a Halo show would be for years and years, and what we got was anything but exciting. Stranger Things spares no expense making sure the world looks authentic. The contrast between the 1980s small town aesthetic and the horrors of the Upside Down were very compelling for the entirety of the series run, but the story was so empty by the end that personally I never want to see anything from this universe again. I'm done, and I just don't care anymore. Speaking of another franchise that I'm done and don't care anymore about but looked beautiful, Game of Thrones. The original show, I mean. The world is incredible. Again, here's a series that spared no expense making sure the show looked impressive, and it had great actors to match it. But the writing was so bad by the end, it nearly crippled the entire franchise. Instead of going into House of the Dragon and Knights of the Seven Kingdoms with an overabundance of viewer goodwill, HBO instead needed to dig themselves out of the hole that Dumb and Dumber had dug them into. Our visuals of today depict a culture of shows pretending to be movies. Everything underneath is still TV. In fact, it's just bad TV. But it has a nice filter on it, and the filter is getting more and more expensive every single year, while the writing sadly continues to get worse. Reason number 7, and this one's very important: no target market. Here's a fundamental question that apparently nobody in the streaming industry has the intelligence or the courage to ask. Who is any of this for? Okay, I'm a marketing guy. I work in marketing for a living, and the absolute first rule of making anything, be it a product, a show, a sandwich, is who is this for? Who is the audience? Who are you trying to reach here? What do you want them to know? How do you want to give them whatever it is that you've made them? These shows have stopped asking this question. They write for everyone, which means, and I need you to understand this, they're actually writing for no one. Let's start with Starfleet Academy, because yikes. This show is framed, concerningly, as if it's for kids. You have young protagonists in a university school setting and lots of coming-of-age subplots. You got dormitory activities, and these young people are going to classes and taking tests. Like, okay, fine. Now, the show plays and speaks to the viewer as if they are children, as if the viewer is in middle school. There is a very clear juvenile nature to the way these stories are presented, except, and this is a big factor here, the show contains fornication, hookup culture, perversion, crude sexual references, and lots of high-caliber swearing. So it is explicitly and undeniably not a show for children, despite being framed to be. So who is it for? It's not for the young audience, the premise and everything suggests. It's not for the older Star Trek fans who want exploration, philosophy, and moral dilemmas, because there's none of that. It's not for the casual viewer either, because Star Trek requires a ton of context. This show is a terrible on-ramp for new viewers, and because of all of this, it's actually for nobody. It sits in a little quiet dead zone between demographics and serves none of them. And whoever greenlit this show either didn't ask who is this for, or they did ask and they didn't care about the answer. Let's look at Willow again, as if any of you saw Willow, except for maybe Disparu. Is it for kids who want a fantasy adventure? I don't know. There's crude humor and some romance plot lines that parents wouldn't want their kids watching. Is it for adults that love the original 1988 film? Well, no, because the writing is too juvenile for anyone over 15 years old. Again, It sits in the dead zone. It's for neither audience. The show was for no one, and that's why it's been erased from existence. How about Velma? An adult animated Scooby-Doo show where the creator explicitly said she didn't want to include Scooby-Doo in a Scooby-Doo show. She hijacked the brand, stripped everything recognizable away, and then used the name to platform something that nobody else asked for or wanted. It alienated Scooby fans, it alienated adult animation fans, and it confused everyone else. It offended everyone. This is one of the lowest rated animated shows in modern memory, and it's another case study in having no idea who your audience is and then not caring enough to find out. Ah yes, the Acolyte. Let's rewrite the entire narrative of Anakin Skywalker's Chosen One story and replace it with something that firstly will upset longtime and casual fans, but also will tell it in a way that makes it so everyone watching has an extremely hard time empathizing with any characters on screen. If the original Star Wars films could be summarized down to learning to forgive the failures of your father, this show is the opposite. Don't forgive your father, kill him. Kill him now. If you can't identify the audience, you can't serve the audience. And the result is a product that satisfies nobody while actively offending the people who cared about the property in the first place. Reason number 8, the vanishing act. Even when one of these streaming series actually does its job and earns your emotional investment, these companies have found a way to ruin it anyway. They disappear for years. Severance Season 1 ended in April 2022 with one of the most well-respected cliffhangers in modern television. A scene designed to make you need to see the next episode immediately, and that was the entire point. But Season 2 didn't arrive until January 2025, nearly 3 years later. 3 years of your life between, oh my god, what happens next, and then actually finding out. And at that point, who cares anymore? Stranger Things. Season 4 dropped in 2022. Season 5 premiered late 2025. 3 years. These child actors became adults between seasons. The total gap between Season 1 in 2016 and Season 5 in 2025 is nearly a decade for a single show with a total of 42 episodes. It's also one of the most expensive shows of all time. Everything about this is entirely absurd. Euphoria. Season 2 ended February 2022. Season 3 is dropping at some point in 2026, giving this show a 4-year gap. And the writers actually had to account for this because all of the actors have now aged 4 more years. They don't exactly look like they're kids. Westworld. 2-year gaps between every season, the quality declined, the audience evaporated, and by Season 4, nobody cared anymore, and it was canceled. Invincible, an animated show. There's no live action scheduling issues, there's no actors aging out of roles, there's no on-location shoots, and it still took 2.5 years between seasons. And then they split Season 2 in half with a months-long break in between. An animated show couldn't manage a consistent release schedule, but I mean, let's be real, they split it in half because they want to charge your credit card for 2 months of activity. What's annoying is legacy television solved this problem 50 years ago. There's a fall season and a spring return every year, and your show is coming back. You knew when, you can guarantee it, you could stay invested, and it was okay for you. It was simple to watch TV. It was how television worked for decades, and it wasn't something that was broken. Nobody asked for this to change. But streaming doesn't have to follow that model, so it doesn't. And the result is that you give a show your time, you give a show your attention, you get emotionally invested, and then they give you silence. You get years of silence. And some of these shows might never come back at all, quietly canceled between seasons with no announcement. You're gonna find out your favorite show was canceled now from a news article 6 months later while scrolling on your phone, while sitting on the toilet, which, yeah, you better wash your hands, bro. That's gross. Number 9, things have been dumbed down for you. These shows think you're stupid. And there are 2 ways streaming television insults your intelligence. The first is how they explain things. The second is what they think you're capable of caring about. Both are inexcusable. Let's start with Monarch, because Monarch promised you something interesting and dramatically underdelivers. The premise of this show is what happens to the world when it discovers that a Lovecraftian monster is real. How does civilization react when a creature the size of a skyscraper crawls out of the ocean and levels a city? How do the governments respond? How do militaries adapt? How does religion change? How does ordinary human life continue when the fundamental understanding of what's out there has been shattered? That's a good idea for a show, man. Like, that is interesting. That premise has enough weight and scope and complexity to justify every minute of a 10-episode season and then some. And what did they give us? Daddy problems. A guy with 2 families and 2 wives, a lesbian romance subplot, half-siblings bickering about their father's secrets, and insufferable side characters that have no real business being on screen. This is a fascinating science fiction premise on television. You know, humanity confronting the reality that monsters exist, and those monsters happen to be Godzilla. But it's reduced down to a family drama that belongs on daytime TV. They took the biggest idea they could possibly have made and made it the smallest show they could possibly make. Writers take concepts that could challenge you, that could make you think that you might explore something genuinely complex about the human condition and the human experience, and then they keep shrinking it. They sand off every interesting edge until all that's left is interpersonal drama and relationship conflict. Because that's easy, it's safe, and the truth is, that's what the writers know how to do. They don't know how to write geopolitical thrillers about humanity confronting existential monsters, so they just write a family soap opera and they put Godzilla walking around in the background. But it's not just Monarch. This is everything everywhere. Every show with a big premise and a small execution. Every science fiction concept is reduced down to a love triangle. And actually, it's not just science fiction, it's every concept. Every world-ending threat takes a back seat to someone's personal journey of self-discovery. The writers can't rise to the level of their own ideas, so they drag the ideas down to their level. And you're supposed to sit there for 10 hours and pretend like that's enough and it's okay, but it's not. It's a waste of the concepts, and it's a waste of your lifetime. The other part is repetition. That's the other half. Rings of Power is a good example of this. This show will show you a scene, and then in the very next scene, have a character describe what you just watched to another character who wasn't there. You watched Galadriel discover something. Great. Now you'll watch Galadriel explain what she discovered to Elrond. And now watch Elrond relay that information to someone else. You have now seen the same plot point 3 times, and each time it means less. This used to be considered one of the greatest sins of filmmaking. Never tell the audience something they already know. Never repeat yourself. But we have shows now that don't just distrust you and do this, they actually distrust themselves. Writers are so terrified that their own storytelling didn't land the first time that they immediately send another character in to clean up after themselves like a narrative janitor. Star Trek Discovery, a character will experience something, react to it on screen, and then turn to another character and explain out loud what they just experienced and how it made them feel. Wheel of Time, prophecies and world-building concepts repeated by multiple characters across multiple episodes. Stranger Things, how many times and in how many ways do characters need to explain what they're doing, how they're doing it, and why? Every character has an aha moment using props to explain their ideas, and then they need to repeat that idea to all the other characters again and again. Every Marvel Disney Plus show does this too. The villain's plan is explained a minimum of 3 times. Once when it's discovered, once when the heroes discuss it, and once during the confrontation. And every twist is immediately followed by a character saying some version of, "Wait, that means..." Now I can hear you in the comments. Yeah, repetition and over-repeating the plot is something that Netflix pushes on purpose. I know that. I covered it extensively here, and you should watch that video after this one, but by engaging in this repetition practice, something is happening to the impact of the stories no one in Hollywood has realized. When you repeat information 3 or 4 times, you're actually destroying it. You take a moment that should have had impact, a reveal, a betrayal, a twist that should have knocked the audience sideways, and you make it weightless. And from this, the audience learns subconsciously that nothing matters on the first delivery because they're going to hear it again in 5 minutes anyway. So realistically, they stop paying attention. They have no reason to keep paying attention. You're just going to keep repeating yourself. This is a bad formula, and I hope they change it. They probably won't, but I could hope. Reason number 10, writers' hubris. This is the last point. It's the most important one as well, because everything else on this list describes how streaming television fails at craft. Bad structure, bad pacing, bad writing choices. These are fixable problems if the people in charge cared enough to fix them. But this point here is different. And I'm going to use Star Trek as a primary example, but what I'm describing is happening across the entire industry. Star Trek was built on a brilliant idea, a future where fundamentally different cultures coexist while remaining fundamentally different. Klingons valued honor and combat above all else. Vulcans valued logic and emotional discipline. Ferengi valued commerce and profit. Romulans valued secrecy and strategy. Each species had its own belief system, its own moral framework, its own internal logic, and the genius of Star Trek, the thing that made it one of the most important television shows in history, was that it explored those differences without flattening them. It didn't tell you the Klingons were wrong for valuing honor. It showed you what a society built on honor looked like and let you think about it. It treated alien perspectives as worth understanding and not correcting. That philosophy is dead. In Discovery, in Starfleet Academy, in any of the modern Trek shows, every alien species on screen might look different, but as the show progresses, the cultures, the identities, the belief systems all start to sound identical because the writers can only write from one perspective, their own. Every character, be it human, Klingon, Vulcan, Trill, doesn't matter anymore. Eventually, they all start to sound like a person living in Los Angeles in 2025, with 2025 values and 2025 priorities. The uniqueness of each culture becomes a slightly different shade of gray matter from the writer's ideological perspective. And what's scary about this is anyone who thinks or believes differently than the writers, even in alien science fiction, is presented as wrong. Not just different, not just misguided, wrong, in need of being corrected. The character who holds a traditional belief must be educated. The culture that operates differently must be reformed. You must think as I think. You must believe as I believe. And that is dangerous. A story that cannot imagine any legitimate perspective other than its own isn't telling a story. It is now a lecture. And lectures don't change minds here, they alienate audiences. But as I said, this is more than just Star Trek. These streaming shows are being used as vehicles to perform these lectures, and because these shows have no clear target markets like we talked about earlier, they're hitting the zeitgeist like a shotgun spread. Everyone of all ages and all demographics are subjected to watching writers peel apart legacy property after legacy property, replacing the identity of these fictional worlds with their personal belief systems and their personal prerogatives. Do you know what word defines this activity? Because there is a specific word here. It's not stewardship. Stewardship implies care. It implies preservation. It implies that you understand you're holding on to something that belongs to other people, and your job is to pass it forward in a better position than when you received it. It's not to replace it. No, the word for modern day writers is colonization. They're colonizers. Alex Kurtzman, Leslie Headland, and Chris Chibnall are cultural colonizers, no longer building upon the history that came before them. Writers are replacing legacy with themselves, planting their flag on someone else's creation and declaring it theirs, like a narcissistic parasite that needs a host to survive, because their own ideas aren't strong enough to exist independently. Make your own shows, make original characters, we cry on Twitter and Reddit, and guess what? They can't, and they won't. Because people won't tune in. People don't care, and people don't want to hear the lectures. So their ideas aren't greenlit. Their concepts don't get made, or they do get made and quickly and decisively get canceled. And so the only method to force people to hear what you want to hear and think what you want them to think is to rack the shotgun and keep shooting off rounds with reckless abandon, hitting people like Grandma in the airport lobby waiting for her gate to get called, and little Timmy sitting with his mom in the doctor's office because he woke up with the sniffles. Want to see the fruits of the labors of these modern day writers? Go visit your local Ollie's. Shelves are filled with toys and goods of hollowed out franchises, bastardized and perverted by these cultural colonizers. And the audience can feel it too, even when they can't name it. They know these shows don't feel right anymore. Something is wrong. They know it doesn't feel like the thing that they loved, and it's because the thing they loved was replaced with something else wearing its skin. We're living in an episode of The Twilight Zone where all the things you loved were replaced by monsters, and the person wearing the skin, well, they don't care about you. They don't care about the thing they replaced either. They only care about themselves, and they always have. I started this video talking about Monarch, a Godzilla show, a show that should have been one of the easiest layups in the history of television, but it was a 10-hour, stretched thin family drama with mystery boxed plots, feelings, detours, fake movie visuals pasted over a weak script, and a silly podcast reference in 2015. All because writers couldn't resist winking at the audience instead of respecting the world they were supposed to be building. And now season 2 is on the way. 10 more episodes, 10 more hours, the same problems wearing a different monster suit. But Monarch isn't the disease here. Monarch is a symptom. Every show I named today is a symptom, and there are countless more I didn't name that I look forward to hearing from you in the comments about. These 10 reasons describe a system, a machine, a model of content production that has replaced storytelling with content generation. It prioritizes retention metrics over narrative quality, brand management over creative vision, the algorithm over the audience. These companies do not care if the shows are good. They don't even really care if you watch them. They care that you stay subscribed. They care that the next episode autoplays before you have time to think about whether it was worth watching. They care that you keep scrolling through the library long enough to justify the monthly charge on your credit card. It's all part of the business model. You're not really the audience. You are the product. Your attention is the commodity, and the shows are just the bait. What we have now is content, not stories. Content. They have built a system that is fundamentally incapable of producing great TV. But here's what they forgot. You have a remote, and you have a wallet, and you have a brain, you have the power of choice, you have free will. And those are all more powerful than any algorithm has ever built. So stop subscribing to these services that waste your time. Stop watching shows that don't respect you enough to tell a complete story. Stop accepting cliffhangers with no resolution. 3-year gaps between seasons? No thanks. Stop giving them your time. Because your time is worth more than their content. Your time is worth more than any of this. So I would charge you now to support the storytellers who do respect you and do respect your time. The ones who tell complete stories, the ones who maybe don't need 10 hours to say what should have taken 90 minutes. And if you have trouble finding them and you can't find them because it is hard and there is some work to be done on that front, maybe it's time for you to pick up the tools and make something new yourself. The tools are available right now. The old guard is failing. Hollywood is failing. Someone is going to replace them. It might as well be you. Until next time, my friends, create, innovate, inspire, and for the love of God, cancel Disney Plus. Be well. See you soon.